morning, everybody. Welcome back to the Unitarian Congregation of Mendon and Oak, Reverend Patricia. My name is Matthew Marion. I'm going to be starting off this morning's service with Higher Ground by Charlie Gage.
Good morning, and welcome again to the Unitarian Congregation of Mendon, Uxbridge. Welcome to you wherever you're viewing this service from, whenever you are viewing the service. Today's opening words are by George Odell. We need one another when we mourn and would be comforted. We need one another when we are in trouble and afraid. We need one another when we are in despair, in temptation, and need to be recalled to our best selves again. We need one another when we would accomplish some great purpose and cannot do it alone. We need one another in the hour of success, when we look for someone to share our triumphs. We need one another in the hour of defeat, when with encouragement we might endure and stand again. We need one another when we come to die, and would have gentle hands prepare us for the journey. All our lives we are in need, and others are in need of us. And the chalice lighting is from Albert Schweitzer. At times our own light goes out and is rekindled by a spark from another person. Each of us has cause to think with deep gratitude of those who have lighted the flame within us. Please join me in saying the unison affirmation. Love is the spirit of this church, and service its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. In a typical service at this time, we would light candles for joys and concerns. However, in this virtual format, we will light those at the end of the service, and you are invited to send in your joys, your concerns, your milestones, whatever you'd like to have a candle lit for, via the chat on YouTube or the contact form on the webpage, and I'll light a candle for those later in the service. Our opening hymn is Wake Now My Senses, number 298. The words were by Reverend Thomas Mickelson, who was the minister of the UU Church in Cambridge, Mass. For many years. I had the honor and privilege of meeting Thomas Mickelson when I preached in Cambridge last March. In fact, it was right before the pandemic lockdown happened, the very last service before everything was closed. And that was the only time I ever got to meet him, but I had a wonderful conversation with him after the service. And we talked about ministry, and he was appreciative of my sermon, and it was just so wonderful to meet him. And I didn't even know that he was the author of this hymn until afterwards. Unfortunately, he passed away, well, within a few months after the time I met him. But he leaves a strong legacy, including the legacy of this song. And I wanted to read two of the verses for you. Wake now my senses and hear the earth call. Feel the deep power of being in all. Keep with the web of creation your vow, giving, receiving, as love shows us how. And one more stanza. Wake now compassion, give heed to the cry. Voices of suffering fill the wide sky. Take as your neighbor both stranger and friend, praying and striving their hardship to end. Today's story is called Tiny the God by Becky Brooks. Once upon a time, there was a little tiny, itty-bitty, very small little god named Tiny. She lived her life hearing stories of all the big gods, and well, let's face it, she was jealous. She knew she needed to think of some kind of special spark of an idea that would make her existence meaningful. After watching humans for a long time, she hit upon something that just might work, something to make people think, yeah, that Tiny really has a good idea going. That this idea would be it. It would make her famous. And she thought of the idea, and here it is. Are you ready for it? It is, you are not alone. So Tiny took the form of a very light breeze, and in a voice so quiet, each person only heard it in their mind. She whispered, you are not alone. You are not alone. People loved it. It was perfect because who doesn't want to hear that? Pretty soon, Tiny was comforting people all over with, you are not alone. Every evening, she took the form of the breeze and whispered it in people's minds, until one day, she encountered someone who wasn't comforted at all. When Miriam heard Tiny's words in her mind, instead of feeling comforted, she felt agitated. Something was just kind of off about it. She kept saying it to herself over and over again. You are not alone. You are not alone. And Miriam tossed and turned. She couldn't sleep. In the morning, Miriam went to read the paper, and instead of skimming everything, she found herself drinking in every single story in the paper. She was only halfway through when she found herself crying, I am not alone. I am connected to every one of these people. They live in my town and in my country and in my world. They love their children like I love mine. They're scared sometimes, and so am I. They hurt like I hurt. I am not alone. I can help. Tiny was surprised. It hadn't occurred to her that someone might think of it that way. Tiny kept watch over Miriam to monitor this interesting development. Miriam met a coworker in an online meeting, and they talked about a law they hoped the Senate would pass. And Tiny noticed that Miriam wrote a letter to her senator right away. She noticed when Miriam turned in her grocery order, she bought a few extra things for her neighbor and left them with a little note on the neighbor's front porch. She noticed that Miriam had tears in her eyes when she joined in her congregation's worship on her computer, and she heard her favorite hymn through the small speakers. Miriam got out her phone and made an extra donation to her congregation. She watched as Miriam wrote postcards to friends and family near and far, and as Miriam waved to the dog walkers who passed by her house. and as she strung up colorful lights in her living room window for all to see. But most importantly for Tiny, she noticed that when Miriam received a phone call one evening from a friend who she hadn't heard from in a long while, and the friend's voice was shaking. "I'm having a hard time," the friend said. He started to tell her about his troubles, and he began to cry. Miriam got herself comfortable in her favorite chair, and she said, "Take your time. I'll stay on the line with you. You are not alone. I am here. I am here." Tiny heard those words like an echo in her mind. You are not alone. I am here. You are not alone. I am here. In that moment, Tiny knew that she was nothing without Miriam's hands and without Miriam's head and Miriam's heart and spirit. And she knew what she wanted. What the world needed more than anything was that what Miriam had learned how to give. So Tiny went to work. Instead of spending her evenings spreading the gospel of, "You are not alone," she spent her night times doing it too, and her mornings, and her afternoons. Pretty soon, she was spending every minute doing it, until Tiny became the very breeze itself. And that is why there are no paintings of Tiny, no busts or holy books, just a breeze, a low voice, and many, many helping hands, loving hearts, and caring spirits. You can hear the echo if you listen closely. You are not alone. I am here. You are not alone. When water bottles are left in the desert for those who risk their lives to cross it, you are not alone. I am here. At the bedside of a dying person, you are not alone. I am here. In the jailhouse, in the sanctuary, in the hospital, in every place where people gather, you are not alone. I am here. Separate and together. You want to say it all together from wherever you are? You are not alone. I am here. May it be so. It's now the time in the service where we will have the call for the offering and the offertory. And so you're invited to share of your gifts in whatever way you can do so. So there's a link on the online chat where you can donate on PayPal or send in a check or donate your time to help the church, as many of you do. Thank you for all who give from your hearts, from your loving hands, and from your treasure, from your talent, and from your time.
Thank you. This will be Whispering Hope by Septimus Winter.
now invite you into a time of meditation. Let us be together in community from wherever we are by knowing that we are connected by invisible bonds. We will hear the sounds of my singing bowl, and then afterward, Matt will play Spirit of Life. During this time, I invite you to lift up the joys and concerns and the things that are on your hearts, or to simply just breathe and be present. Be aware of your heart beating, the blood coursing through your veins, the air filling up your lungs, and the sound of my singing bowl. And let's enjoy a moment of peace together. Thank you. Our world is in great need of kindness. The more we choose to be kind to each other, ourselves, and our world, the more we will all benefit. This is both the power and the beauty of kindness. A little over a decade ago, when I was a student at the School of Theology at Boston University, I would usually ride the commuter rail in from Franklin. One day, I went to the BU library to get books for the end of semester papers. As time passed, as I was working in the library, it became apparent to me that if I wanted to catch the last train home in time to make an evening meeting in Franklin, that I would need to check out the books I was using instead of photocopying the relevant pages like I had planned. The problem is, I had selected about 10 books, and we're not talking thin paperbacks here. 4 or 5 of the books were big books, hardcover books, and one of them was an oversized book. How was I going to do this? I realized if I could put all the smaller ones in my backpack and put that on my back and sling my purse over my shoulder, I could carry the 4 biggest books in my arms. Okay, so I set off for my trip back to Franklin with all these 10 heavy books. From Boston University to my hometown of Franklin, there are 3 steps. I would take the T to Copley Square, then walk from Back Bay to Copley, and then I would take the commuter rail back to Franklin. Some of you know this kind of a ride. Anyway, now I waited for the T to come. And it nearly always came and stopped at the school within 10 minutes. But that evening, the train was late, several minutes late. When I finally got on the crowded T, a young woman saw my big load and she offered me her seat, which I gratefully accepted. It would have been very hard to balance all the books standing up there, but she gave me her seat, so that was good. However, by the time I got to Copley, I only had 4 minutes to get to Back Bay to make the commuter rail before it left. And I knew I could do the walk in 5 minutes if I walked at a brisk pace, because I had done it before in 5 minutes. It would usually take me 7 or 8 if I walked along a little more leisurely. But that Monday, I had 4 minutes. And I had this big load of books that I was lugging with me. So I did it. I walked very fast and carried my books, and it was very taxing, but I made the train. And I collapsed onto the first open seat. However, I was very out of breath and coughing and worn out from this ordeal that I had made for myself. Once on the commuter rail, my seatmate encouraged me to set down my books and backpack on the seat between us. My plan had been to do some of the reading on the way home, but instead I found I just needed to recover. Another woman offered me both a grocery sack to help me carry the books the rest of the way home and a cough drop because she had pity on me coughing. As I reflected on the kindness of these strangers, I felt comforted. I hadn't even asked for their help, but they had responded to my need. Their kind support carried me as I recovered on the rest of my journey home. As I reflected on kindness for the sermon, I realized there are 2 ways we share kindness. One way is simply responding to a person's need in the moment. This kind of kindness can't be planned. However, one can set an intention to be ready to give kindnesses when life presents opportunities. The people that gave me their seats and gave me a grocery sack and cough drops didn't plan to offer these kindnesses in advance. They simply responded to my need. The other way we show kindness is by planned, intentional acts. After Marcia's husband, Bob, had a knee operation, they went on a previously scheduled trip. While they were gone, it snowed. And as they were coming home, they dreaded shoveling and shopping for groceries. However, they arrived home to find that their neighbors had shoveled them out. And not only that, the neighbors had even left a hot meal for them in the oven. What kind neighbors. Kindness starts in our hearts. Bhikshuni Thubten Shodron, author of Cultivating a Compassionate Heart, says, "Often we see other sentient beings as hassles. This mosquito is disturbing me. Those politicians are corrupt. And why can't my colleagues do their work correctly?" And so on. But when we see sentient beings as being more precious than a wish-fulfilling jewel, our perspective completely changes. This is how we can grow kindness in our lives. Do you ever have the experience of thinking people are hassles? why is this person driving so slow in front of me? Or why did they just cut me off in traffic? And oh no, the woman with the full grocery cart got to the checkout line right before I did with my 3 items. I'm going to do some of the suggested kindness challenge activities for Lent that I'm going to tell you about in a little while. However, I think the most important thing I can do is to see people as people of worth and dignity and preciousness, and not as hassles. Even when they do things I might not like. And yes, I might still have a feeling of annoyance in driving or at the checkout lane or wherever. I might have that feeling. But that doesn't need to be the main way that I view the individual in my presence. And, importantly, I can also be compassionate to myself about my feeling of annoyance. We can keep both of these thoughts. We can be aware that we're annoyed and be compassionate toward ourselves. And we can view the person as another human, sentient, wonderful being of worth and dignity. This is a spiritual practice, a daily spiritual practice that we can incorporate into our lives. And I also wanted to lift up the importance of showing self-compassion to ourselves, because sometimes it's easier to show compassion and kindness to others than it is to ourselves. Blogger Terrence Stone has a great quote about showing compassion to ourselves. He said, "We must remember that if we are to give compassion to others, we must first be compassionate with ourselves." I urge you to take a moment, notice your breath, and search your depths. Is there anything about yourself, a failure, an insecurity, a bad habit, a negative emotion, for which you are very hard on yourself? When you find that thing that you are hard on yourself about, you can say the following words. And he says, I will use anger for the example. But he says, insert your own hang-up. And this is what the practice he does. He says, I see my anger. I care about my anger. I desire an end to my anger. May I hold my anger with tenderness. May we all hold our suffering with tenderness and care, like we would for a dear friend. Our world needs more big acts of kindness. We need to widen the circles of our care to include all groups of marginalized people and all who suffer. We also need to care about our planet, as daunting as that might sound. And we need to offer small kindnesses whenever the opportunities present themselves, like helping someone who looks lost, or saying something encouraging to the mom who is struggling with your young children at the grocery store, or like picking up someone's lemons that have spilled out of their bag. Here is a poem called Small Kindnesses by Danusha Lamaris. I've been thinking about the way when you walk down a crowded aisle that people pull in their legs to let you by, or how strangers say, bless you, when someone sneezes, a leftover from the bubonic plague. Don't die, we are saying. And sometimes when you spill lemons from your grocery bag, someone else will help you pick them up. Mostly, we don't want to harm each other. We want to be handed our cup of coffee hot and to say thank you to the person handing it, to smile at them, and for them to smile back. For the waitress to call us honey when she sets down the bowl of clam chowder, and for the driver in the red pickup truck to let us pass. We have so little of each other now, so far from tribe and fire. Only these brief moments of exchange. What if they are the true dwelling of the holy? These fleeting temples we make together when we say, here, have my seat. Go ahead, you first. I like your hat. Author Tara Kuzanu points out that we are wired for kindness. That's part of our biological heritage, designed to help us foster relationships, work together, and survive in groups. When we are kind to others, it releases neurochemicals in our bodies that increase trust and give us a warm feeling. Being kind is a way we can boost our own happiness and also boost the happiness of others at the same time. Furthermore, part of the power of kindness is that it creates ripples. When you do a kind act, it might inspire the recipient to also act kindly as well. In fact, a study found that even when we see kindness being shown to others, we're inspired to be kind ourselves. Interestingly, the study's lead researcher, Ha-Sung Young, noted that it didn't seem to matter how people witnessed the kind act. They could have read about the kind act or watched it on a TV show where characters acted altruistically, or simply saw someone who helped another person. The effect was the same. Those people would go on to act more kindly and generously themselves afterward. More evidence that we need to be aware of the things we watch and the things we read. When we do something kind, we might feel that we are only doing a small act of kindness, when in reality, we don't know how far-reaching the ripples might go. When you throw a rock into a stream, there are always ripples. Kindness can really help change the world. Let's build a kinder society, one act at a time. Let kindness bloom. Amen and blessed be.
Thank you. This would be as tranquil streams.
We will now have the joys and concerns. First, a concern for Texas. It says, help any way you can. Second, it says, a joy I learned this past week. Independence, liberty, happiness is the goal in Vietnam, and happiness is a goal in Denmark. And finally, a joy for spring coming in a few weeks. The days are getting lighter and longer every day, and spring is definitely coming. That is good news. And let me light the final candle for those things that remain unspoken in our hearts and minds. I have two announcements this morning. The first one is we are still collecting donations for the Milford Community Meals Program. We have a box in the entryway set up, and you can access that on Sunday mornings when we have the door unlocked, or contact one of us who has a key, and we'll be happy to help you get in to bring the donations, or even pick them up at your house if you request that. They're accepting food, especially like canned soups and chilies and pastas, and bottles of water and breakfast foods like small boxes of cereal and small boxes of shelf-stable milk. So this will help the food insecure folks in the wider Milford community. Secondly, I'm excited to announce the Kindness Challenge that we will have during the Lenten period. We will focus on kindness for the next 6 weeks. I will preach about different things, but the Kindness Challenge will be ongoing for 6 weeks. So every week we will have a different focus for the recipients of our kindness. This week the focus will be our family and our dear friends. Other weeks we will have kindness outreaches into the wider community. We will have random acts of kindness. We will have kindness toward ourselves. And we will conclude the time with kindness toward our planet. So you will find these activities on our website, the Kindness Challenge activities. There will be different activities for each week. Suggested activities, you can also come up with your own other ones. And I encourage you to participate in this challenge. If you want to fully participate, you can find a kindness act that you can do every day, or at least 6 days a week. Or if it works better for you, you can simply select a few kindness activities to do during the week. Some of these are very simple. They're not all long, time-consuming things. Very simple things. In fact, I will read you the activities for this week. So they'll be on the website. I will announce them in worship. And if you're on my email list for the congregation, I will also send them out that way. And thank you, Peter, for changing the sign. Let kindness bloom is the theme for this period. And finally, before I read the activities for this week, I also want to tell you that I really want this also to be a community building activity. So it makes it a little harder that we're not together in person, but I would like it if you could be in touch with me about some of the things you might do, or if someone does something especially kind to you. And I can share that with the community in worship. And I can do it anonymously, so you won't feel like you're boasting if you tell me the things you do. Or maybe you have a new exciting idea, or something I hadn't suggested. I would love it if you either write into the live stream chat and worship with your kindness notes, or you can email them to me. And my email is now also on the website, so feel free to drop me a note. Okay, so for this week, the focus is on kindness for family and friends. And here are the suggested activities. Write a sweet or encouraging note and put it where a loved one or friend will find it, or mail it. Tell a dear one something you appreciate about them. Do a chore for a family member or friend that they didn't expect. Buy someone you love a healthy treat or fuzzy socks just because. Cook something delicious from scratch to share. Send a care package to someone you care about. Call someone who is on your mind just to tell them that you care. Learn something about a hobby or an interest of a loved one. Share an inspiring article or blog post or book that made you think of them. Find a way to encourage or support a loved one or friend beyond what you already do. Make something handmade as a gift. Simple drawings and poems count. Finally, reconnect with an old friend. So I hope you can pick some of those to do this week, and I will be doing some of those as well. And let's enjoy this time and build more kindness in the world. I will now extinguish the chalice. We extinguish this chalice, but not the connection we always share. We are not alone. We are here. The postlude a little later in the service will be "For all that is our life." And one verse goes like this: "For all that is our life, we sing our thanks and praise, for all life is a gift that we are called to use to build the common good and make our own days glad." The benediction: go in peace, go in hope, go in kindness, until we're together again. And please join me for the serenity prayer. God, grant us the serenity to accept the things we cannot change, the courage to change the things we can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
you, everyone.